Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Well, hey everybody, it's good to be back. Episode 127 of the podcast. If you listened last week, some friends of mine took over the podcast and talked about the idea of should I stay or should I go at my church, in my job, in my position. It's a question that comes up, obviously, for those of us who work on church staff. And you had some different perspectives there. Some friends of mine that have recently made transitions and different reasons and different timing, and some like Jim who are still in the middle of that. So that was a great interview. I really appreciate them doing that. While Jennifer and I welcomed our third child, our daughter Paige, and she's 2 weeks and 2 days old as the time I record this right now. So, you know, it's our third child, so it's not exactly new for us, but there's that adjustment time period with the losing of sleep and our kids getting used to it. But she's just beautiful. She's a blessing. And it's been a lot of fun to spend more time with her and the family the last couple of weeks. But I'm back this week with a new interview with my friend Corey Jones. Corey's been on the podcast before. It was a great episode where we talked about productivity and how does Corey get done what he gets done in a week. And we really walked through his whole week and talked about that. But in this episode, it's kind of unique. His church has done something that I'm sure other churches have done, but maybe not in the same way. I don't know. Or if they have, I didn't get to interview him like I did with Corey. His church decided they needed a bigger building. They were growing. They needed to, make more space, and they wanted to give their building away in a sense. They didn't want to build a new building and move in it and just continue to do church the way they have, just with more space. They wanted to create a building for the community. And boy, did they. I mean, as you listen to this interview, you'll hear how they use it, what that looks like. I mean, we just dive deep into that. So it's not really a children's ministry or student ministry interview and episode where we talk about specifics within there and ask questions. It's really just how are you using this building as a church? How does that impact children's and student ministry? And it's just a great story. It's unique. They've been in there about 5 months, I think. And so I think you'll love listening to this episode and hearing what that journey has been like. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Corey Jones about moving into this building that they built for the community. Today we have Corey Jones back on the podcast. Welcome back, Corey.
Hey, Nick. Glad to be back.
So give us an update on how you're doing since the last time you came on the podcast, maybe a little introduction for anybody who didn't listen to that episode, which they should to help them more productive. We talked a lot about that, how you do all the things you do. But anyway, give us another introduction for anybody who didn't hear that episode.
Nah, things have been great. I'm in my 8th year of ministry at Southern Hills, the church at City Station. We changed our name, so that happened. And I do the NextGen ministry. I'm executive pastor of Next Generation, and have a great team. We love it. Our church is growing, and just continues to be fun to ride along the ride.
And you've had something. I mean, the church changed names, which is big. But the other thing that we're going to talk about is that you gave your building away, which is big and unique. It's a very unique story. A little bit different. Yeah. And I said, I don't know, what was it, like June or something, when I was like, we got to talk about that on the podcast. And you're like, well, maybe we should live in it a little bit so we can have more.
Just make sure we don't crash and burn before we go telling everybody. Yeah, that's good advice.
So we hit pause, but here we are 4 months later or whatever it is. So give us the backstory of that. How did that come to be? What does it mean, give your building away? How did you get here?
No, that's great. Like a lot of your listeners, we were an established church. We'd been doing ministry for years and had our campus, had our building, and things were trucking along. We were growing, and our lead pastor saw that we were quickly outgrowing our space. And he didn't want to build a new building at our current location. It was just outside of the town, didn't really fit. And in conversation, it was really just laid out that he wanted to build something that was for our community, that our biggest asset, our building, was going to be used by the community all the time. And at first, I didn't even catch on to what he meant by that. I thought it was cool, we'll have some birthday parties and stuff.
We'll write it out from time to time.
Yeah. No, he literally meant everything that we build is going to be multi-purpose. not even for us, that we're going to figure out how we can do church in the community's building. And so it's owned by us. It's our building, but it's used by the community every day. There's 700 guests that walk through the door. It's pretty cool.
So you own the building as the church, or did you create a separate organization? Because I see that sometimes you create a separate nonprofit kind of managed by the church, or is it just the church still owns it?
Big picture wise, there's the church. We own everything. So the elders still oversee, and we have a preschool that has a separate business. We have a City Station campus housing that college students live in that has a separate business. Each of the different companies within us are separate, but still all under the church.
Gotcha. So let's start. I want to hear more about that, like what's in there. We're going to get into that. But how did you know what to build? Because I know when we've talked about it, you wanted to ask the community what they needed, because it's not like you necessarily had this specific idea. We want it to be about this and these programs. You wanted to find out what the community needed and then build the building to suit that. So how did you ask the community?
Our lead pastor did a lot of the legwork. I didn't have to do any of that. That was nice. He went out and he talked to like the CEO of our hospital and the police chief. And we have a big college campus. He became friends with the president and just the different people that were movers and shakers in our community to ask them, what does our city need? What could make Carrollton a better place, a better community? And so through that, there were a couple of things that came up. There's a couple of different preschools in town, but all of them have waiting lists and none of them were extended day. And so moms or parents that work, it was very hard for them to find a place that they could drop their kids off before 7 a.m. or pick them up after 5 or 6 at night. And so we knew that needed to be a component, an extended day, state licensed preschool. And it fits really well with our preschool ministry. So multi-purpose there. It works out great. And talking with the college, they have, it's growing. They're out of space and they found a lot of their students were struggling to find places to live. And they wanted something, that could house college students, but also be a good environment, because they were building different things and finding that they were having a bunch of college students living together and a lot of trouble with the law. And so they were asking specifically, like, could it be a covenant living situation? Could it have some rules? Which we were all about, figuring out ways to make a safe, secure Christian environment. And we put a lot of that kind of stuff in. And it's not even that you have to be a Christian to attend or live in our campus. We just ask that they abstain from alcohol, tobacco, drugs, premarital sex, and that they're serving the community. And so some people serve in different regards. Some people serve in the church, but most of them serve their community different ways. We found that they wanted a healthy restaurant. We had a lot of Southern restaurants, not a lot of necessarily healthy restaurants, specifically the hospital. They have a get healthy, live well, big push, and they were struggling to find restaurants in town that had good options. We had a workout facility in town, but it was an expensive one, and the community, a lot of people were saying we'd work out if we could afford it, or they talked about wanting a gym or a place physical, like a gymnasium where they could play basketball. And childcare came up a lot of times where people were looking for a place that they could drop off a kid for an hour, 2 hours. Not necessarily like school, but just childcare. So we did that, and really just a place to meet. We have conference rooms that are multi-purpose. They're used for us on Sunday morning as our kids' environment, but they're also used, this past week, there was a bar mitzvah, a gender reveal party. There are a lot of birthday parties, a 70-year-old surprise birthday party, which I thought was a little risky.
Nice.
And our Tanner, our big hospital in town, they had a conference on our campus. They used the whole building. It was cool. But they even bust in 300 kids to do a getting healthy presentation as part of their big conference thing. And so we just really opened up different meeting places, different conference rooms, our gymnasium, all that to the community as a way to fulfill those needs.
So tell us, and we got some insight there because you were sharing some of the things that are part of it. What did you build? Start, I guess, overall, what's the building like, size of the building, and what are those different components of it? Some of them you mentioned, but walk us through that in case there was any pieces that we missed.
Yeah. We bought a big lot of land, 8.5 acres, and we built on all of it. We needed more parking, in fact. And square footage of the building, that's probably some kind of a stat that I should know, but I don't know. It's 4 stories, and basic layout is on the first floor, there's a preschool, and it's all secured down its own wing. You have to have security badge entrance and all that kind of stuff. And then on main entrance, right by the main entrance, there's a Mustard Seed Cafe. It's a restaurant, open 7 days a week. Sunday, we have like a brunch thing going on after church or before church, depending upon which service you go to. And the food's different. It's globally inspired food. And so it has a lot of like Asian, African, Latin American kind of flavors and stuff, a little bit different. And 10% of all that goes to missions. And they're very strategic with their workers. They try to hire people that might have a record, or people that are college students and might not be the most hireable people. And their food's great. I eat there all the time.
I bet you do.
There's also, first floor, there's also the gymnasium. It's huge. We can put chairs in there for Sunday morning. It'll fit 750 chairs. But throughout the week, it's just a gym, and we set it up on Wednesdays for our student ministry, and then tear it back down so that Thursday afternoon it can be a gym. And then we set it back up Thursday night for church, and then tear it down so that Thursday night it can be back into a gym. A lot of that kind of stuff. Second floor, there's a workout facility. It's a gym membership. It's what you would picture, state-of-the-art fitness equipment, that kind of stuff. Their big push is they want community. And so their motto is that we'll know your name by your second visit. They're very one-on-one training. They have group classes and stuff like that, but the goal is community. They want a lot of community within that. And they have just different classes. There's the biggest one's this yoga class, and there's a spiritual element to it where they'll take time to pray and stuff like that. But it's weird when you walk through your building and you see everyone carrying yoga mats. It's just weird. Second floor, we also have meeting rooms. They're smaller rooms where they can fit 10 to 12 people. Those are used all the time for different study groups, counseling groups, all the different care ministries. So like grief share and divorce care, sexual idolatry. It's one of the classes that meets here. They can be reserved online. It's free. Just put your name online and it's yours. And then there's a bigger meeting room that can hold about 30, 40, depends on if you want tables and chairs. And then there's a great big conference room that you'd picture like in a hotel. It could be subdivided into 4 different quadrants. And each of them have like their own tech and lights. And at one point in time, there could be a kids environment happening in one of the conference rooms, a birthday party in another one, I don't know what it was. Saturday night, there was like a whole bunch of Greek food and stuff like that going on in one of them. I don't even know. And then there could be like a prayer meeting in the fourth one. That's not even a church thing, but a community thing.
Yeah.
And then we'll use that space Sunday morning. We'll set up for our kids' environments. It's a whole lot of moving pieces, but it happens. There's also a indoor playground on the second floor and a game room where there's just like basically a bunch of kids playing Fortnite all the time, and they can rent controllers downstairs and go upstairs and go at it. And the moms will come in a lot of times with their kids, let them play in the playground. It's all indoor and just quiet, so it's nice. And then there's offices for our staff and the staff of the different entities that they'll have office space in there. And then the third and fourth floor, it's weird because we're a church and you'd think people would know all about it. But I would guess our average church member has never been on the third or fourth floors of our church. It's college student housing. It's their environments. There's like a lobby and stuff like that, common space, but there's quads. It's kind of like a hotel, but really fancy and nice, and people live there. And so I work with the college people all the time, and I'm never up there just because it's their house. Why would I go to their house? It's a little bit weird sometimes.
Is that third and fourth floor, both?
Third and fourth, yes, sir.
So that was a big part then of the building, was this college, room boarding situation. It ends up being half the building, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, it's there's 60 full-time college students that live here. That was part of the agreement with the city that they needed to be full-time college students. They're in quads, and the way we set it up, where there's one person that's the leader of the quad. They're the discipler, and then there's 3 other people, and they're in an ongoing discipling relationship where the discipler asks, "Are you going to church? Are you doing your hour of serving the community?" They'll do Bible studies together. And it's pretty cool to see that happening where it's an ongoing relationship, partially out of just you live together. But also there's some intentionality in there to make it a growing space.
That's crazy. So 4-story building had to be pretty expensive. Because 8.5 acres, I was thinking your church was already a church of about 1,000, and now you're 1,700 or whatever. Since you've moved in, right? It's grown to 1,700 in those 4 months. And 8.5 acres at first, I thought that's not a lot, but then the fact that it's multiple stories, I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. So you guys use the gym as the auditorium, and that's where you have services. Preschool is used for preschool, I'm guessing, and then you said those big rooms that can divide, kind of like a hotel, large conference room. That's where you do elementary. Is that it, or are there other rooms too that you have to multi-use?
No, those are our main rooms. Like the meeting rooms will be used for different small groups and stuff like that. But it's mostly those rooms, and we have different things that meet. So like Thursday night, we have a church service. It's our first service of the weekend. And we set up everything for elementary. And then mid-service, when we shift into small group, we shift into half of the conference room. And our college student ministry begins to set up in the other half. And then right when we're done, they take over that whole thing, and they'll be in there until 10 o'clock at night. Our student ministry on Wednesday is in the gym with the high school, and the junior high takes up half of the conference room. Preteens take up the other half of the conference room. But everything's used, like we're booked 3 months out for every time block. And it's a little bit frustrating at times also as the pastor, because I'm like, man, I want to have a Christmas party. Should have planned that earlier, because there's not a room in our church that I can do it.
That's interesting. Well, that's a new reality that you're only 4 months in, so you're learning that.
Oh, yeah.
Does somebody on staff manage all of that? Like, is there one person's job? That's what I figured.
That is her full-time job. And it's not just the calendaring, but she will be there to welcome people. She'll unlock the doors and let them in and talk about how to do the lights and tech and all that kind of stuff. And the way we have it set up is it can be 100% free. If you want to, you can set up yourself. You can clean up after yourself. You can do your own tech. Everything's very user-friendly. You pay like I don't know what it is, $25 deposit or something like that. And then that reserves your space. And if you return it as it was, you get your deposit back. Everything's good. Or if you wanted, you can do like this thing with the hotel or with the hospital. They did a huge production, and so they paid for some people to run lights and tech, and they brought in microphones they wanted 30 microphones for something. It was crazy. So you can pay
like a musical or a play or something.
Oh yeah. I don't know. That's another thing that's really different is I used to know everything going on in our church, and if there was someone there, I would know that they were there and why they were there. And it is just very different. Whereas now there could be 1,000 people on campus and I don't know what's going on. I have to ask, like, so who are you guys with? What's going on here?
Or somebody asks you, hey, you work here. Hey, what's going on over here? I don't know.
I don't know. I can look on a calendar, but I don't know. But yeah, back to your original question. There's a lady, Camille. She's doing a really good job of not just booking those, but caring for the people. She makes sure that they have what they need, and she explains the vision of our church. And so that when there's a bar mitzvah, when there's any kind of event, that she's taking that opportunity. They're in our building. Let's talk to them about what we're about, why we did this whole project. She does real good with that. I love it.
Yeah, that's good. That's smart because I think it's great for a church to open up the doors to the community, but it is probably a missed opportunity if you don't try to connect some kind of relationship there or something to give them an idea of what they're doing. Because they could just be invited there for whatever the event is and have no idea. Because it's called City Station, right? It's not like it's labeled necessarily your church. It's like City Station. Your church meets there. So it'd be very easy to miss that a church has done this for the community.
No, there's nothing on our building that says Southern Hills or church. It's all City Station and City Station Fitness and Mustard Seed Cafe. And, we have to intentionally let people know there's a church here. I've actually been in second service, so Sunday afternoon on the second floor, and there's a guy up there looking for the workout facility. And so we're talking about it, and he had no idea that there was a church service going on downstairs. He heard the preaching, and he's like, "What's going on down there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's church. It's Sunday." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know. That's cool." And so,
which I can see that happening because, if you just come there for whatever, and it's not labeled church, I pulled up the website, which is citystation.org for people who want to check it out. And looking at the building, it looks like the first two floors are one floor print, so to speak, footprint, like a certain size. And if it looks like the third and fourth stories aren't the same size, like they're not the full width of the building, so to speak.
Yep.
For where those
much more like a hotel up there. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. So, and you still have your old building that you're going to sell. You're currently leasing, right?
Yep, leasing it to a bunch of different Christian organizations in town for real cheap. Not actually even making our rent there, but we wanted to. We didn't want, again, another giant building to go to waste, and so we reached out to a real small church in town that was growing and doing exciting things, and said, "Hey, if you want to use it, it's yours until we sell it. Or if you end up growing to the point that you can buy it, we'd love to sell it to you. But in the meantime, how about you do Sunday church here? How about you do events?" And they're growing, they're killing it. I love it. They're doing really good.
That's great. How far away is that location? Like, how far did you move for this?
Probably 6 miles.
Okay, so that's not that far. And that's great because, again, I feel like this is more and more the case in church today. But it wasn't long ago when if a new church was coming to be 6 miles from you, you were not friendly. You know what I mean?
They were the enemy.
Yeah, that happened to us when we moved because we were a church plant and 13 years ago. And when we moved in, it wasn't an enemy thing, but it was not welcome either. It was kind of like, no, we're good. We have enough churches around here, which wasn't true. For the population of people, we could have used 5 new churches right then. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of people not going to church. But that's great that you're open-handed like that and helping this church out, even though they're 6 miles away. That's awesome. So what about you're now in a situation where you have a building, but it's kind of like you don't. It's kind of like you're portable, but you're not 100% portable. So what does that look like? How are you doing that with teams? You didn't have that before too. So a lot of churches that are portable, they were like that from the start, and that's just all they knew. Some churches I know of go back to portable for whatever reason, and that you're kind of in that boat now. So tell us a little bit about what it's like to become a somewhat portable church and how you manage that, and what's that look like with volunteers? Did you have to recruit new teams and all that?
Yeah, no, it's been good. We kind of half-stepped it a little bit where we started before we ever moved. We began leasing our building to the Boys and Girls Club, and so that was also helpful where it got our church. Like I said, man, it's one thing to say our building's for the community, and it's another thing to live it. Mm-hmm. And so when we started to live it and get a taste of what that meant for our building isn't our building anymore, it really helped. And so at first, we just had a couple of volunteers that would come in and help make the transition from what was going on throughout the week to Sunday stuff. And built a little bit of a team. And honestly, I had a lot of hopes for when we moved into City Station that all those people would just jump right in and be like, okay, now we're going to move everything. Honestly, though, we lost most of those people. They were cool with moving some stuff, but when it came to moving everything, that became harder. But our culture really changed, where we went from after church, we check out the kids, and then we might grab a lesson and say, hey, or something like that, but we're out. Our culture very much became, as a church, we are in this together. People gave so much financially to make this building happen, that I think their hearts followed. And so when we did, like our first service and we moved everything in and it was all exciting. And then afterward, I'm telling them, we're now a community center, so we need to make it back into a community center. I think that's when it really started to sink in, and our people got excited about that. And they'll ask me every Sunday when we're putting the chairs back and we're taking the posters off the wall. They're like, all right, so what's scheduled this week? What are we setting up for? And I love it. I love being like, there's going to be a safety training for the, the Pregnancy Resource Center. They're going to do this, like how to stay safe personally and stuff like that. They get excited about that, and it helps renew that vision of why we're moving the chairs all the time. It is a lot of work though, and it's taken a lot of admin for our youth team in particular. They needed to figure out if it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job, and they were able to give specific tasks so that, like the Gaga Bowl and the 9 Square in the Air, they get specific people each week that are setting up and tearing down certain things. And also trying to just not burn people out from the burden that is ministry, but then also the burden that's set up and tear down. So we're still fresh in that. It's still fresh on our staff. And so I'll let you know soon how it's going, but so far it's been good. So far, keeping the why we're doing it has been very helpful to me. It's helped my heart from feeling owed, or that I've earned it, that I don't have to do this anymore or something like that. But it's not. I'm serving my community after church by setting up. And so it's been good.
Yep. So it sounds like a lot of the setup teardown is happening with your current volunteers. Just, hey, one additional thing every week, can you put that away? It's not necessarily like all these new teams that are set up teardown or staff that are set up teardown.
Yeah, we did get some people that are specifically for setup. Getting people there early on Sunday, we found to be very difficult.
Sure.
Yeah. We recruited specifically for some people that would just come and help set up. And then most of our teardown is done by our teams.
That's good. That's good. So it's been 4 months or 5 months or whatever. What have you learned? What has worked well? What, do you wish it was done differently? What have you learned in the experience so far?
I've had to rethink through some things. That's been a growing process for me. So we're very much for our community, and I have to fight the inner drive sometimes to be like, come to church, because we have people in our church that are volunteering every single week that attend other churches that are just in the community and want our community to be great. And so there's people that come and serve throughout the week that don't attend church or attend somebody else's church. And I don't want to steal great people from other churches. I don't want to be that guy. So I've had to consciously think, does this person come to our church? Does this person go to somebody else's church? Or is this somebody that I need to try to get plugged into a church? And that's been hard. That's been a growing experience for me. Thinking through the community element of it, and trying to figure out ways to be more intentional with things like the restaurant. In our staff meeting this morning, the restaurant owner guy, he was like, hey, why don't you guys make like little tents that we can put on the tables to advertise that? And I'm like, well, gosh, that's a great idea. Who should have done that 4 months ago?
Yeah. Why didn't somebody on the church staff think of this idea?
Yeah. But there's a lot of those things. Like, we have the preschool here every day, and I don't want just another thing on my preschool pastor's plate, but those are some families that are here every day. And how are we serving them? How are we loving them? How are we being the church to them when they're not necessarily going to church? I've had to think through a lot of that kind of stuff, because I want people that don't attend church to feel very welcomed here. I want them to, I don't remember who said it, but to belong before they believe. That's huge. I want that for them. And trying to find the balance where I'm being like Jesus and being light and inviting, but at the same time, I'm not pushing away the tax collectors. I'm not pushing away people that are like, cool, I support what you're doing here. I just don't want the faith element. I still want to be able to love those people like Jesus does. And there's a lot of...
Yeah. Because like the strategist in me is like, I would want everybody that came through the building would have to... I don't know if register is the right word, but if you could get information from them and you would know are they part of a church, are they not? Because then you know how to serve them. Like if they're part of a church, great, that's awesome. If they're not, maybe we're going to invite them to our stuff. But then the other part is you don't want to have to do that for everybody that comes in the building either, because it's like, well, that's weird. I mean, especially if you're there as attending the hospital, whatever training thing, like that's goofy.
That's I love one of the stories. It came one of the first, probably after the first month, one of our builders for the building. He had come for our very first Sunday, and he knew some of the church members from high school. And so he was like, I know it's a big deal for you. And so I want to come and see what it is that I've been building this whole time. And so he came, he experienced church and was like, okay, that was neat. That's cool. But while he was there, one of the friends from high school invited him to just walk over to the cafe and grab a meal. And they're eating dinner together and catching up and having good conversations. And while that's going on, another staff member comes up to talk to this church member. And through that whole process, he ends up inviting the guy to an elective class. We do electives for everything. I'm doing the Tech Talk, Matt McKee's book right now. It's a great one to teach the community. Love that class. Yeah. Anyway, he invites him to an elective class, and he what he said at the end of it was that he's like, I think I just like really went to church for the first time. Like I sat through a service and I've done that before, but man, I've connected with people, and I think I just signed up for Sunday school class because we don't have Sunday school. We call them electives, even though it's Sunday school. For us, we're hiding in plain sight for them, where we are there for them and helping them before they even realize it. And I love that now one of the builders of our building is attending. His family's coming, and he's become a member. He's ready to do this thing far before he even knew it was coming. I love that.
That's awesome. It makes like you mentioned that story of the restaurant owner and coming up with the tent ideas for the tables. How did it work in terms of you're basically like if you think of City Station like its own organization? All of these things run through that. It has the authority. It's owned by the church. But are the sub companies, I'll call them, the preschool, the daycare preschool, the restaurant, I don't even know, is the gym membership thing, is that a sub company? So like how did you find those people? How did that work? Are they just like folks that you got in and now there's an agreement where they really are truly separate, or is it tied in pretty close to the church?
Those stories, I think God would have to get the full credit for. The guy that owns the restaurant, Michael Perkins, he was a missionary in Nicaragua for probably like 10, 15 years and was feeling a call back to the States. And previously I'd owned a restaurant. We've been partnered with him for a long time in Nicaragua as a missionary. And so when he was asking about coming back, we're like, well, we're looking for someone to open a restaurant, and we love you, your family, and trust them. Yeah. And so God brought him, the guy that's doing our workout facility. He was one of the first 3 members that started our church and has been a pillar of our community forever. And he's served the church and loved the church very well, but he's been a community member and he works at our college and is just like a huge pillar in the athletics of our college. But he was getting near the age where he's like, I want to do one last thing before I retire or die, and I want it to be something meaningful. And so when we actually reached out to a bunch of people about running the workout facility, and we're like, well, why don't we ask Eddie? He would be a great fit, and he did a workout thing back in the day before college. And so he signed on and has been phenomenal. Our preschool, I had an admin, and she had been doing it for maybe 6 years and wanted to do something else. She originally wanted to be a missionary and then went to school became a teacher. And then we stole her to be our admin. And she was like, she had the itch to do something bigger, something more. And she loved preschool and was like our greatest volunteer, even though she was just an admin. And so I don't remember if she approached us or if our church approached her, but she's been leading that ministry and hiring preschool workers and running a business, figuring out what all that looks like. So really, God's brought a lot of people. We searched really hard for some of them and found them in our backyard wanting it. And so it's been cool.
That's awesome. So what would you, last question, or almost last question, what would you recommend to other churches? I mean, you've had this experience now, you're 4 months in. A lot of churches want to be for their community, like you said earlier. What would you recommend?
I don't think the answer is go spend millions and millions and millions of dollars and build this great big thing. Because I think if I gave that advice, there'd be churches that bankrupt and shut down because God didn't call them to that. But I do think if you are for your community, then you need your biggest financial asset to be for the community, your church. And so I would figure out ways that the church building can be used for the community, ways that you could clean it up or reorganize the calendar, or just even if you just simply blocked out some different dates and you're like, all right, elementary school, we want to host you for a Christmas party. Like there are so many things in the community that your church could help meet their needs. And so maybe it means that you have to intentionally seek those out, or maybe you just put a post on Facebook saying, hey, we have space. Do you want to use it? I don't know. But I think you could do something that is for your community with your building. I think that'd be one of the big ones. And then 2, I'm sorry if I pushed a little bit too hard, but do something that's stepping out in faith. Like I would guess there's not many family pastors that are laying in bed at night saying, okay, God, you're the only one that can pull this off. And if you don't make it happen, there's no way that we could do this without you. I think that if we were to be praying some more of those prayers and stepping out in faith that God has directed, I think that there could be some huge fruit from that. I'm not necessarily saying put it all out on the line that you're going to shut down if you don't, but if you're called to that, maybe. Like there was a point when Nick, when we were signing for this property, that I talked with our lead pastor, and he's like, I'm not going to share this with the rest of our church. I'm not going to share it with our staff, but I just signed a document that if we don't pull this off, we're shut down. We won't continue as a church. And in one hand, I freaked out a little bit on the inside, but at the same time, I was like, man, I love being a part of that. I love that God's called us to this, and we followed. We were obedient. Because if I was the lead pastor, honestly, I don't know if I could have done it. I think I would have cowered. I think I would have been like, no, I can't put everyone's jobs on the line and risk this. It's one of the things that I just admire about my pastor, that he answered that call. So
that's awesome.
If you're called to step out on faith, go. Be faithful with that step. We serve such a faithful God.
That's true. That's true. And we probably take too few risks as a church, as churches, I should say. So that's great. You all took a big risk. It's been working well. I'm so glad you've been able to serve the community in this unique way, but also reach more people for as a part of your church and connect them to Jesus. That's awesome. How can people connect with you? Some people are probably going to want to reach out. They've got more questions. Maybe they're thinking about something similar, or
cool.
They're building a certain way. How can they connect with you?
Citystation.org has a lot of information on there. Actually, it's where I researched for this podcast to make sure I had my stats right. Mm-hmm. So you can find a lot of information about the different things going on at the church there. Or if you're local and want to book the place for a conference or something, go for it. Nice. And then if you want to reach out to me, I'm Corey Ray Jones everywhere. So just go on whichever social you enjoy and connect with me there. I'd love to.
Cool. Well, Corey, thanks for coming back on the podcast. It's a unique story. Definitely wanted to be able to share it and let people hear what's going on there. And man, I hope it continues, like the momentum and the impact you're having in the community and the chance to reach more people. It's only been a few months, but I hope it continues and you guys make an even bigger impact. That's awesome. Thanks, Corey.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Quite a story indeed. And they're using that building even more than I thought. I mean, the community, it's just, man, that's huge. So here are a couple of things I've thought about action steps coming out of this podcast. It's a unique one for sure. It's not like, we talked about an area of ministry where you can take some of those ideas and implement it in your church, but it'd be worth checking out citystation.org to see what that looks like, what the building is like, what the schedule's like, the different things they offer there. Like I remember as we were doing the interview, I looked up the website and just looked at all the different things that they do there. And there's tons of things, even more than Corey mentioned. So you could check that out. I think it's worth a conversation. Is there a way that we can leverage our facility, if you're a church that has a facility, for the community? Maybe it's not going to be as extreme as what they're doing there at City Station, understandably, but maybe there is a way that you can reach into the community and help serve them. And even for Corey, and I mentioned in the interview, a friend of mine whose church has done this, but I don't know. Actually, maybe I didn't mention it in the interview. But anyway, they built a building like that kind of for the community in a sense. Not similar, not just like Corey's, but very similar, more athletically driven. And it has been exactly that. They have absolutely reached the community. There's, hundreds or thousands of people in there all the time for the different things, but it hasn't necessarily turned into growth for their church, meaning they're not reaching a ton of those people for Jesus. Now, of course, at the end of the day, you want to be for the community and serve them. And so maybe that's okay. Or maybe that's part of an overall strategy to help connect people to Jesus. So different people are going to experience different things. Corey's church has certainly grown from that. What was it, like 1,000 to 1,700 just in the 5 months since they opened the building. So that's pretty cool. But as you think about how you can serve the community with your facilities, be thinking about what are the next steps. How can we not only, serve them and help them, but maybe connect them to Jesus? What can we do to help follow up and help them take their next steps? So there you go. Unique story. Couldn't wait to share that with you. Corey was right to let some months go by before we talked about it so they could experience it and he could share what that was like with you. I just thought it was fun to hear. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing the podcast, leaving rating and reviews on things like Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. That really, really helps. If you ever have suggestions for, interviews or guests that you'd like to hear from, email me at nick@nickblevins.com. I'd love to hear those. Until then, hope this was interesting, unique, helpful for you, and I hope you have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.